Okay, here we go. Okay, I see other people got on. I just want to tell everybody we are not. This is not the weekly roundup class. Will be at night, 8 p.m. at night. Most people can't really join at this time. They prefer to come at night, so I'm going to be moving it to that time. And for now, just for today, we'll do halacha. Maybe I'll do the siddur. I'll move something around. I know we usually do seder negunim at night, but and I don't want to do that during the daytime. I don't know if I feel like it has to be like a certain setting and everything, but we'll continue on with Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. We're moving along pretty well. We're already in chapter 12, and we'll just keep going. So it's a great mitzvah to pray in the synagogue or a beis medrash. A beis medrash is a place of learning. In fact, in yeshiva, there is no synagogue in yeshiva. The study hall, a beis medrash means a hall, a house of study, but it's a study hall. They have a Aron Kodesh in there. They have an ark where they hold the Torah, and you pray there. You should pray in the place that you learn. Your best prayer will be done in the place that you learn. I think it might even get into that. So it's a great mitzvah to pray in a synagogue or in a beis medrash because they are sacred places. Even if it happens that there is no minyan, it's nevertheless a mitzvah to pray there, even when praying alone, because they are holy places. So you might think, I already missed the minyan. What should I? Maybe I should just daven at home. It's better to go to a shul and pray there. It's more holy. If you're asking what I do, I probably just pray at home. But that's not a proof. That's just, whatever. I can find many excuses why I should do that. If you usually study in a beis medrash, you should also pray there with 10 people, even though in your city there's also a synagogue. However, a beis medrash is holier than a synagogue. We talked about it earlier. In an earlier chapters, you can't turn a beis medrash just into a synagogue, because you can't be what's called maridin b'kodesh. You can only be ma'ilin b'kodesh. If you want to tear down a synagogue, you can't make it into just a house. You have to make it into a beis medrash, which is the highest form of holiness, sacredness. It says that God is found. Where is God? Since the destruction of the temple, where is God found? He's found in the 4 amos, which is like the 4 cubits of halacha, of study. That's where you find God, in places of study. It doesn't say synagogues, it says places of study. Okay, so however, if you're not accustomed to study in a beis medrash, you should pray in a synagogue where there's a multitude of people. Like we've said many times, B'roiv am hadras melech, in the multitude of people is the glory of the kings. I always like to take this point and always bring up, I know I've done it a million times, saying Kiddush. Is it better to say Kiddush together with over wine? Is it better to say Kiddush with a congregation? Most synagogues, you go to a synagogue. I think they do it in our shul as well. I never really pay attention, but they make Kiddush. The rabbi will make Kiddush out loud. Shner will make Kiddush out loud, I believe, for everybody. But then there's an opinion that maybe you should make it on your own because you're saying the words yourself. So it's 2 camps. I think there's 2 camps, even within Chabad, of what to do. So you'll usually find Chabad people, men and bachrim, young men, not married men, making Kiddush on their own, especially Friday night. And when it comes to the daytime, to fulfill this, what it says over here, in the multitudes of people, the glory of the king is glorified, which means, when a bunch of people get together and they praise you, that's much more powerful than if just one person praises you. But if everyone collectively gets together and they agree, wow, that really beautifies the king. So on Shabbos day, they will make Kiddush. They will listen to someone else make Kiddush. And what's called biyotzi, they'll fulfill their obligation through that. I know I've said that probably 25 times. If there are 2 synagogues in your city, how's the joke go? It's not a joke. It's a real story. One day, a man was stranded on an island, and they finally found him a year later. And they saw that they had built like this little town. And he said, "Oh, this is the post office." Whatever, he made some, post office. Obviously didn't send out any postages. The post office. This is my home. This is the vet's place. And here's 2 synagogues. And they asked him, "Why 2 synagogues?" He said, "Well, this is the one I go to, and this is the one I don't go to." That's like a classic Jewish joke. So if there are 2 synagogues in your city, you should go to the more distant one in order to earn a reward for the added steps. Walking to shul has reward in it. Said Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, a person should always awaken early and go to a synagogue in order to be counted among the first 10 people. Because even if 100 come after him, he receives a reward equal to all of them. If you are the one that's called mashlim, the minyan. Mashlim means to complete. Shalom, like complete wholeness. If you're part of the 10 that complete it, that brings the Shekhinah. I'll say that for Chassidus class. The Shekhinah, the divine presence, and you take a reward in bringing the Shekhinah. Now you're dealing with Chabad people over here. We don't really care about reward, but what do we see? Reward and punishment. It's not our thing, but it just tells you there's something very special. When there's great reward, that means there's great spiritual energy that accompanied your act. So therefore, you should try to do it. That's why the 10th man is always the what do they talk about in basketball? The 6th man. Well, in the shul, we praise the 10th man. Our sages of blessed memory have also said, whoever goes morning and evening to the synagogue or the Beis Medrash in the proper time and remains there the proper amount of time and conducts himself there with the proper sanctity will merit long life, as it is written. Fortunate is the man who listens to me, watching daily at my gates, waiting at the posts of my door. And it is written following this, whoever finds me finds life. So if you hang around places of holiness and you act accordingly, you're the first one there, the last one to leave, like a good quarterback. For you, those of you who live in America, the best athletes, they get there early and they leave the latest. Last one to close the lights. Well, the same thing is true with regards to Torah, but don't think you should just go there and like take a nap and schmooze and have coffee, which I love to do. You should act accordingly and do what you need to do. You should. I'm just kidding. I do learn a lot. Okay, you should select a synagogue or a Beis Medrash in which you pray regularly. You should always. It's called a makam kivua. You should always pray in the same place. Now, that doesn't mean if somebody else sits in your place. This is a big problem. I see it all the time. Somebody comes and sits in your place, and they're like, "That's my place." That's not very nice of that person. But you should try to pray in the same place all the time because there's a certain kedusha that's tailored for you, that you have created in that place. It's all about being in the right mindset. Prayer and Torah study, you have to have the right mindset. There are many laws with regards to how to enter a shul, how to think, how to prepare. Preparation is key. You should select a synagogue or a Beis Medrash in which to pray regularly. You should also designate yourself a specific place to pray. I jumped the gun. The area within a radius of 4 amas, which is like 3 feet, is still considered your place. Let me just, what does that mean? It's still considered your place. If somebody, you can acquire an object. Acquiring something in Judaism, it has halachic status. It's binding in law. So there are certain ways you have to acquire something. It has to be in your hand. It has to be raised up. There are like, if someone just like sticks something in your pocket, that doesn't necessarily mean you acquire it. And that there's a lot of halachic ramifications of that, lawful ramifications. With regards to something that you want to accept, for example, the famous example is what's called a get. A get is a document that that a woman signs to divorce her husband. And the husband has to the man has to give it into the woman's hand. He signs it, and then he has to give it to her. He gives it to her. Now, does he actually have to hand it in her hand, put it in her hand? No. If she wants to accept it, we assume she does. If she wants to accept it, all you have to do is put it within her daled amas. You can just throw it. It can land within her 3 feet, and she doesn't have to even pick it up, because there's an acquisition there. But everything we know in Judaism is a a result of something spiritual. So the fact that within 3 feet of you, all around you, has halachic ramifications, that means spiritually you have some sort of spiritual space that goes beyond your body. It goes around 3 feet. It's a very there's a lot of Kabbalah in a Kabbalistic concept. The area, just a little factoid, the area within a radius of 4 amas is still considered your place. It's preferable to designate a place near a wall. That's why you'll see very often people like to pray in front of a wall, not just because of the Western Wall. If possible, as did King Chizkiyahu. And Chizkiyahu turned his face to the wall, and then he davened. When praying, you should not stand or sit near an evil person. When you pray in your house privately, you should also designate a place for yourself so that you will not be disturbed by the members of your family, unless you have kids. Then there's no...
Rabbi, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So, evil person, in one of actually a couple of other halacha books, it says wicked person, but how would you know that this is an evil person?
Yeah, you can point them out. Come on, which is interesting. No, evil means someone's gonna. I think evil means someone who's gonna disturb you, or try to really. I have to look up what it specifically means. I'm not sure, but I will say, the word for a congregation is tzibor. Tzibor means congregation. It's the letter tzaddik, beis, and resh. Tzaddik is obviously refers to a tzaddik, as we'll learn in Tanya class. No Tanya class tomorrow, by the way. But as we'll learn in Tanya class, this week's Tanya, if you learn the daily Tanya, we're talking about a tzaddik right now. A tzaddik is a completely righteous person. A beinoni is someone who is trying to do their best, and a rasha is an evil person. Says the Torah, in order for you to daven, to have a proper congregation, proper minyan, there has to be a mixture of a tzaddik, a beinoni, and a rasha. And we know from the Kitzur, which is the incense offering, which is the most holy offering in Judaism, it's a daily offering, and it's also the offering that's done in the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur by the Kohen Gadol. He's giving incense. There's their own incense setup over there inside the Holy of Holies. There's made of 11 ingredients, and one of them is the chelbana. And chelbana was a disgusting smell. However, when it was mixed together with all the other scents, it was disgusting on its own, but when it was mixed together with all the other fragrances, it was beautiful. So says Hashem, I want every type of person in my shul. Now, a little caveat, you don't have to daven next to that person. You don't have to strike up a conversation with that person. When are you not allowed to talk to somebody, by the way? When are you not allowed to engage in somebody? It says halacha, if they're not going to listen to you. If they're not going to listen to you, you actually have it's called, I think it's under bal tashchis. It's wasteful. You're not allowed to try to engage with somebody, talk to somebody, if you know they're not going to listen, which is, how often does that happen? Very often. So try not to daven near such a person. However, if you can influence that person, says halacha and says chassidus all over, you should try to influence them.
I just remember one time, it was in the men's section. There was a person who was disturbing everyone. I don't know what was his deal, but I know it got a little anxious in there. However, it's just when I am davening in the women's section, and it's just you're completely focused. It's just how would I even pay attention? If they're not disturbing you, then you just keep davening.
If they're not disturbing you, you keep davening. Yeah. If the disturbing person is still being disturbing, but he doesn't disturb you, you keep davening. In fact, which you and we spoke about, that if and the Tanya says, the Alter Rebbe says that if somebody is being disturbing, that's for you to focus even harder. That's a time for you to focus even more, do your best. Now that person has their own issues, obviously. Even halachically, they have their own issues. It's a big problem to act like that in shul. Okay, moving along over here. Okay, it's a mitzvah to rush. It's a mitzvah to rush when going to the synagogue, or the Beis Medrash, or to perform any other mitzvah. As it is said, let us run to know God. Okay, let me just say, I actually knew a bunch of people that would run to shul. You're not supposed to do that. I don't know. I think it'll say it at some point. You're not supposed to run. You're supposed to move quickly. But running is not good. Running is actually bad for your sight, according to halacha. shouldn't run. And that's why Friday night, before we make Kiddush, you should look at the Shabbos candles. It says that it restores 1/60th, I believe, or 1/32nd, 1/32 parts, whatever. I think 1/60th of your eyesight that you lost during the rush that you did during the week. Now you have that in mind. So often you'll see someone make Kiddush, before they say Yom HaShishi, they look at the candles. It's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to rush to the synagogue or to the base medrash. Rush doesn't mean run, even though it says over here, let us run to the no God. It is also written, in the way of your commandments, I will run. Let's see if it'll go. Therefore, even on Shabbos, it's permissible to run in order to do a mitzvah. I'm just telling you, it's a problem. Okay. However, in the synagogue or in the base medrash, it is forbidden to run. Upon arriving at the entrance of the synagogue, it's proper to pause slightly in order not to enter suddenly. I think with time, I think this maybe is the halacha. I'm trying to remember now. I think within halacha you should run, but we took upon ourselves not to run because nobody was able to. You'd run and then you'd come, you'd stink, you'd be sweating, you would walk in improperly, like it. Well, I think we took it upon ourselves not to. You're just focused and you walk with determination, but we don't run. I think there's oftentimes we'll find that there's a halacha and then there's what we actually do. Upon arriving at the entrance of the synagogue, it's proper, but if you're not sure what to do, you always go to halacha. The Rebbe would always say that. However, in the synagogue or in the base medrash, it's forbidden to run. Upon arriving at the entrance of the synagogue, it's proper to pause slightly in order not to enter suddenly. You should tremble with awe before the splendor of his glory, blessed be his name, and recite the verse. As for me, through your abundant kindness, I trembled, right? Which is like a request for permission to enter, and then you should enter and walk with reverence and fear as one who walks before a king. Now, you got to be real, especially in Chassidus, you got to be real. They say about there's a, what's it called? An idol. There's an idol called the Baal. It talks about it in the Torah. What was the Baal? It's disgusting. They would defecate in front of their idol. Now, why would they do that? So in the first generation, they would they had so much fear of this idol. Obviously, there was nothing to the idol, but they had such fear of this idol that they would literally lose control. But the next generation didn't really have that fear. And so, but what did they see? They knew that their bubbies and zadis, their grandparents would defecate in front of this idol. So they would purposely defecate in front of the idol. It's quite disgusting, but there really was no fear. So Chabad, in yeshiva, there was always like this thing, like you're like a balnik. You do things for show. In other words, you act more holy than you are. So when we come into a shul, you watch the Rebbe come into the shul. The Rebbe is not like bowing down, as you might see many people. You walk in with reverence. Acting reverence and acting humble and all these different doesn't mean you have to negate yourself and you have to be mortified, try to harm yourself and act like a loser. That's not humility. That's called humility, fake humility. Sheker, anavas sheker, aniva sheker, anava sheker. It's called fake humility. That is like one of the worst things you can possibly do. But you just have to be real and transparent. That is kedusha. Holiness is being transparent. That is the definition of something that's holy. You see the godly spark that's inside. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to reveal the godly spark inside, make it transparent. Klipa means a shell, means it covers over. You don't see, you get stuck in the shell. You don't see what's the depth behind it, the truth behind it. So we don't walk in. I know it says you should walk in with reverence, but that's something that you work on, you strive for. I remember learning this when that was what I was told, and that is what I see when I first learned this. Okay, as for me, you walk with reverence and fear as one walks before a king. In these communities where the Jewish people have their own streets, it's a mitzvah to put up on the tzitzis, the talis and tefillin. Oh, you should put your talis and tefillin on at home. You won't see that in many places, but you'll see that in Borough Park and Mea Shearim. You see that in Jerusalem. People will walk in the streets with their talis and tefillin already on. It's actually pretty cool. And proceed to the synagogue in that attire. They do that because it's safe to do that. Nobody's going to stop them on the way and be like, oh, what is that on your head and whatnot. Although I think the Rebbe now would say you would want people to stop you. Hopefully Jewish people will stop you and ask, and then a chance to educate. In a place where they reside among the Gentiles, or if a person must walk through filthy alleys, it's preferable to put on the tzitzis and tefillin in the corridor of the synagogue, because it is a great merit to enter the synagogue enwrapped in tzitzis and crowned with tefillin. We'll do one more. Maybe we'll finish the parak, which would be amazing. The siman. Siman means chapter. So we're on chapter 12. If because of some emergency you cannot attend the synagogue or the base medrash or any other regular minyan, you should make an effort to gather 10 men to pray in your own home with a minyan. That's why very often, especially in from circles and from religious communities, someone who's sick will make a minyan in their house every day. Those minyanim are pretty good because they move pretty quickly. Like there's not so much. There's usually good food there, and there's like a lot of good things over there. If that's too impossible, you should at least pray at the same hour that the congregation prays, because this is the time of divine favor. Let's say it's Shabbos. There's actually even bigger halacha. When do you take in Shabbos? If you live in a community and they all take in Shabbos at a certain time, you're really supposed to take in Shabbos at that time, unless I think you have permission not to, but you should. You should take in Shabbos at the exact time. So over here, where we live, during the summer times we'll take in Shabbos like 2 hours early. I don't know, let's say 2 hours early. Plaga Mincha, which was when we'll take it in. Really, everyone should take it in at that time. Now, if you don't want to, you shouldn't show outward signs that you're breaking Shabbos. You're not breaking Shabbos. You shouldn't like drive in your car. Everyone takes on 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Shabbos doesn't really come in until 8. Night falls not until 8. At 7:30, you shouldn't really be driving around. That's inappropriate. You should try to daven when everybody else davens. However, if you must study Torah or do work, which you are prohibited to begin before praying, like we explained in chapter 8, you're permitted to begin early and pray immediately after sunrise. You try to pray at sunrise. I think we spoke about that, right? It's called Nates, the Nates minyan, early minyan. Nates is when the sun rises. It's the best time to pray. That the Western Wall, big minyan at sunrise. It's actually beautiful because they start praying right before. You're not allowed to say Shmona Esrei, the Amidah, until sunrise. So what they do is they start like 10 minutes before or 15 minutes before sunrise, so that by the moment it becomes sunrise, they begin praying. And to see like hundreds of people silent for all at once, it's quite powerful. Similarly, if you're weak and find it difficult to wait until the congregation's prayer is completed before eating, it's permissible to pray earlier. So there's a halacha that you shouldn't eat before you pray, unless you're considered sick or weak. Now the question is, what do you mean? I go to my Chabad house and they have the best pastries, set up pastries and coffee right before prayer. That's because in these later generations, everybody agrees that we're much weaker and we should eat. And the story goes that the Rebbetzin, the wife of the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Chabad Rebbe, she started praying. She was very weak. She got very weak, and she would pray very quickly. She would pray very quickly in order to eat, so she'd have energy. And the Tzemach Tzedek said, her husband said, it's better to eat in order to pray than pray in order to eat. And so ever since then, Chassidim have the custom of eating before they pray. Eat a little bit, whatever you need. I think I definitely have coffee. Coffee's like air to me, so I have to breathe. But halachically, from a halachic standpoint, you should only do it if you're weak. But again, most halachic authorities, most law authorities agree that our generations, later generations, are weaker. We can't just pray. Yeah, these fast days back in the time, we have these fast days. They would fast and then they would have all the energy in the world to do whatever they need. They would fast 4 times a week and they would go to work and have full energy. We can't do that anymore for some reason.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
I just get the impression that the people that are spoken of in Genesis and whatnot, the ancestors were different people that lived longer, and that, that God changed that for us. And we do live shorter lives, and we don't have that kind of energy that Moses had. Although some Jewish people that I've observed from the different tribes do have a lot of energy. They can keep going.
Yeah, there's some wild people bouncing off walls at our shul too. But I think I'm talking like even in the 1500s, people they might not even lived as long as we do now, but they were stronger. They had more will. We're like pampered too much. I think that has a lot to do with it. It like kind of handicapped us in a certain way. You're absolutely right. Certainly back in the times of Genesis. I mean, yeah, Joseph. I mean, Jacob. They were ready to take on a whole Egyptian army. I mean, it was serious. I don't think it was just confidence alone that thought they would be able to take them on. For sure, they were much stronger. However, I'm just going to continue and finish it up over here. However, it is only in your home that you are permitted to pray earlier in this manner. If you come to the synagogue in which a congregation is present, it's forbidden to pray before the congregation prays. Ask your local Orthodox rabbi if you're allowed to do that. Even if you want to leave the synagogue to pray before the congregation starts, it's forbidden. If you want to start before everybody else starts, it's saying it's forbidden. There are, in later halachas, it's going to somewhat contradict that, so to speak. Unless you see that the congregation is delayed in prayer, then in order to pray before that time of prayer elapses, you may pray alone. So there's actually a time period called Zman Tefillah that you're really not supposed to pray past a certain time. It's not a halachic ramification. It's not like you don't have to. People aren't so what's called makbid. They're not so careful about it. But if you are careful, then so in Chabad, to bring it up, Chabad we don't start davening until 10 o'clock on Shabbos usually. Our shul starts at 9:30, but in regular Chabad shuls they don't start till 10. And there's something called Zman Tefillah. You're really not supposed to pray after a certain period of time, and sometimes that's like 9:45. So you're not even supposed to pray after 9:45, and we're starting at 10 o'clock. So if you're someone who is very careful about Zman Tefillah, that you want to pray by a certain time, you don't have to wait for the Chabad minyan to begin. You can start praying on your own. If you got that. Similarly, just do what everybody else does. Similarly, if you are sick or in some other unavoidable circumstance, you're permitted to pray earlier, even in the synagogue. In such a case, it is even better to go home and pray. There's something called that you should learn. B'makim shelibi chafetz. You should daven and pray in a place. B'makim libi chafetz, in a place that you desire. You daven best. For many years, the Rebbe davened in his own room until he started davening with the minyan every single time. So he'd come down to hear the Torah, but he would daven in his own room. Now, I'm not saying that's a proof for everybody, but there's a thing about if I pray better here, it's better for me to pray alone in this place without the congregation. The congregation is very disturbing. We pray in my own place. You should still come down for Kiddush, though. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah. What's up, man?
Hey, when you say room, you mean his office, right? Because we shouldn't be davening in our room at all.
In your bedroom? Well, it's better to play in a place. Yeah, it is better not to pray in your own bedroom. I just mean like if you have a room like in your house that you pray, versus going to a synagogue where it's very disturbing for you to pray. It's better to pray in your house. And then, but you shouldn't. There's also a concept of loy tifresh min hatzibur. You shouldn't remove yourself from the congregation. If you're part of a community, fine. Prayer is something that I can't do well with the community, but I'll do everything else. I'll still be active. I'll come for Kiddush, let's say on Shabbos. I'll take part in activities, whatever it is. I'll tifresh min hatzibur. You need to find ways to be reunited with the community. Yeah, about davening in your room. Well, if you're in a hotel room, you have no choice to daven in your room, and that's fine to daven in your room. The bathroom door should be closed.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's the main thing. Some say you shouldn't. It's all about keeping the bathroom door closed. Okay,
so why you cannot do in the bedroom?
I think it has to do with, it's like a place of, any place that usually isn't, you can. First of all, you can. But any place, usually a place that is disheveled or the bathroom door is open, there's like, undergarments all around, that's kind of inappropriate. But if everything's like put in order and nice, I mean, in a way, you're like inviting the king over into your bedroom, so to speak.
And
you know what I mean?
Rabbi Randy Friedman would say that you should not have anything in your room except for your bed, because that is reserved for intimacy
Right.
between the man and wife. And so therefore you should not be in the presence of the king there trying to daven.
Yeah, I don't know if Manas is speaking from a halachic place. I think he's just speaking from like an intimate type of place, and that's his thing, talking about bedrooms and intimacy and whatnot. But I think if that's your only choice, you're in a hotel, you daven in your room, but you have to clean it up. You have to get it in its proper place. But you're right, otherwise, for sure.
So, but you have like when you wake up, you wash your head. You wash your hands. That you say the brachas upon waking, and the modani and the al netzalat yadayim and all these. But then, like, as long as it's proper and you keep it tidy and neat, and you make the bed, you still can daven. Because what if you live with roommates?
Yeah, for sure. Right. There are situations where you can't. Well, do you have a common area? That's the thing.
I do, but it's, I do, Rabbi, but like, it's not always like living room. It has what you call it, like objects in between. And then in the kitchen, you can't. There are too many things and it's usually messy.
Right. So in your case, a bedroom is probably the cleanest. No, I'm joking. It's a good question. But again, the whole concept is, you just have to decide on your own. The whole concept is, where would I rather bring the king, so to speak? Where would I rather bring his presence? Would I rather bring it in? Is my bedroom the best place, or is my living room? What's my most? I think I don't know. I think each person maybe has their own. We have to evaluate each person and their situation.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. There's something I want to say. By the way, I just want to mention, maybe I'll say it after, but we do wash our hands in the morning, but it's always best to make the al netilas yadayim in the kitchen.
Okay.
We do wash in when we wake up in the morning, we wash the negelwasser for sure. That's something we do. If you can, I think it's better to do it
to be in the kitchen.
To be in the kitchen.
Yeah, and the other reason why I don't do in the living room is because there is too much traffic, and it's very noisy. Every time I pray, it's just too much traffic. People going. It's New York.
You can't. That's why in New York you don't see people walking down with talis and tefillin in the streets. New York,
right?
Like
hey, I'm davening.
What is that? Yeah.
I said, hey, I'm davening here.
Oh, yeah. No, the snow turns brown very quickly in New York. Okay, very nice. Thanks everybody for joining. Ask you have any questions, just text me. Tonight will be the weekly roundup. What would usually be now, I'm going to do it tonight. It's pretty interesting. We're going into Mitzrayim, talk a bit about Tanya, a little Rambam, and we'll get it going. All right, enjoy the rest of the day, everybody.
All right, thank you.
See ya.
Thanks,
Thank you.
See ya. Oh, my phone was on.